right, welcome to Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Strockis from Oak Brook PD in Illinois. He has 25 years experience in law enforcement, and I'm really excited to have him as a guest. So welcome, Chief Strockis. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me, Paige.
I'm excited too. We were talking offline, and we have some commonalities that we didn't even realize until just now that I used to live out there. And I was talking about this beef spot that I was trying to go to that's actually like in your area. So it's really funny because I know exactly where you guys are. And I know you said that you're enjoying some good weather, which is really nice this time of year for where you're at. I know the Chicago winners, so.
It's finally turning the page here, I think, in Chicagoland. So we're excited about that for sure.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for being here. I would love to give a little bit of background on you. I know you've been in this career for 25 years. What made you get into law enforcement, and what did those 25 years look like for you?
Geez, so I didn't have anyone in my family that was a law enforcement officer. I right after high school, I started working for a print shop. I thought that I wanted to get into printing. I took some classes in high school, and they seemed to kind of click. And I realized that very shortly that was not for me. I then got an office job processing healthcare claims, and I realized an office job was not for me. So I took some college courses at the community college and just took an elective in criminal justice. And I had some phenomenal law enforcement leaders that really sparked an interest. And I thought, yeah, I could see that as my future. So I started testing, and lo and behold, I ended up in Oak Brook. Back then it was very competitive. It still is competitive to a certain extent, but not how it was in 2000 when I was testing. And I took the test here in Oak Brook and ended up getting the job, and the rest is history.
So I know you said that there was something that kind of sparked your interest. What was it about those leaders or those mentors that made you want to go down this path? Was it something specific that they did or said or something specific about the job that got you excited?
Well, some of the stories, of course, every young individual wants to hear the grind and sort of the running and gunning of police work, and that sparks your interest. That's not the reality of it. You recognize pretty soon that those incidents are pretty few and far between. But I think what sparked my interest is that after being in kind of a manual labor type of position and doing that every day, and then being in an office setting and doing that every day, that I think the biggest thing for me was that I needed to do something different experiences. Nothing in police work is ever the same. I mean, I guess my days now as chief are a little mundane and kind of consist of meetings, and doing something like this is out of the norm for me. So I'm excited to be here. But I think the biggest thing in police work is just dealing with different individuals, doing different things, not knowing what you're getting into on any given shift, and having to be kind of mentally and physically prepared to handle those situations. I think is really uh, attractive about the profession.
I love that you said that, having to be mentally and physically fit and prepared for whatever this career throws at you. How did you see this career impact your personal, physical, and mental wellness? Was there anything that, you went through throughout your career that, maybe impacted you?
Yeah, I mean, I think looking back on my life, I've been here the majority of my life. I'm 47 years old. I've been here for 25 years, so I've been at this job in this profession for more than half of my life. And I think some of the scars that you get along the way. I mean, I'm divorced. I ended up being a single parent to two young girls that have been with me primarily for the last 11 years. I was kind of thrown into that situation. Ended up being with somebody else that I probably shouldn't have been with, but ended up getting a great boy out of the situation. So being a single father and juggling all of those different aspects and still trying to be successful in your career, I think was a challenge for me. But in a lot of ways, I sort of excelled at my job in times where my personal life was maybe a little messy. I was able to focus on my job, and that was the one thing that I could control to a certain extent and kind of embrace. And so I think the pinnacle, or maybe a life changing moment for me in this career, and kind of what boosted me into this role where I am as chief was in 2022. We had a big changeover in our department. The chief of 10 years was leaving. We had just had this mass shooting in our shopping center, and I was in charge of the investigation surrounding that. Um, I lost my father in February of 22. That was a very dark time for me. I was in a long term relationship, but I knew it was coming to an end. I wasn't happy there, and I had no intention of really applying for the Chiefs job. You know, it wasn't even on my radar. But then after I lost my dad, and I knew I didn't want to work for somebody else, I really kind of just put all my effort into applying for this job. And I said multiple times that, I was either going to be the chief of police or I was going to get fired, and there was going to be nothing in between. I was just going to lay it all out on the line. And I did that. Luckily, it was well received by the powers to be. And, it's been really a sprint for the last 3 years now. I've been in this position, just changing many different aspects of this organization, from the technology front to the policing philosophy front to officer wellness and physical fitness and defensive tactics, policies, procedures, the building itself, different programs and implementations. I think that not just me, this team that we've kind of built has really turned our department into a completely different direction. We were very community service orientated for a long time, which is important. But we went through a time there after that shooting. Then, I think that really sparked a lot of interest in the community that, hey, like this stuff can happen here as well. That we've really shifted our efforts into a proactive policing sort of mentality. And we're not the biggest agency by any means in DuPage County, but we're consistently number three in the top three of arrests. And, we have a motivated team that really kind of went back to the basics of law enforcement and kind of keeps the bad guys out of here to the extent possible that we're able to.
First of all, thank you for sharing. I really appreciate that. And I think it's an important message to realize that there's stress on the job, but there's also stress at home. And so, everyone in law enforcement has to deal with both. And how do you manage that? How do you find that healthy balance between work stressors and home stressors? And one of the things that I think you kind of reminded me of is that, I think that there's this idea of, you need to prioritize things at home and not let the job become all of you, which I think that is a very positive message. But I also think that if you do it in a healthy way, your work can become something that you throw yourself into that is positive, especially if you're going through hard things at home that maybe are overwhelming. Having a deeper purpose and things that you're doing at work can be a little bit of a reprieve from all of that that's going on. So that was kind of what popped into my head, and I appreciate you sharing that. I would love if you could maybe expand a little bit on, the changing of philosophy. You said policing philosophy and taking more of a proactive approach when it comes to policing. What does that look like for you guys?
Yeah, Oak Brook is a pretty upscale community. It's an interesting town in that we only have about 8,000 residents, but the daytime population's like 100,000. We have the second largest shopping center in Illinois, over 50 liquor license, 7 hotels, major thoroughfares, and major interstates that run directly in the city. So our geographic location is such that anything that happens out west is at some point coming back east through the village and heading back to the city generally. And, we really kind of had, I feel, and I could say this because I've been here a very long time and have been through different administrations and held many different positions in the department. Uh, to a certain extent, the things that were happening here were not publicized or advertised to the community. I think many of the residents felt like they lived in this bubble where they were completely safe to leave their car keys in their car overnight or leave their doors unlocked. And then when something happened, they were shocked that it actually did happen. We have over 90 license plate readers in 8 square miles, which is probably the highest density of license plate readers anywhere in the country. And when you have something like that and you're getting hits on stolen vehicles and stolen plates and wanted individuals, you have to take enforcement action. Otherwise, what's the point? So unfortunately or fortunately, we're involved in a lot of police pursuits, and we're not an agency that just turns off our lights and goes in the opposite direction. We have tools, stop sticks in multiple different capacities, a lot of interagency collaboration. These guys are getting good at developing plans to take these offenders in custody. And we certainly advertise that by making videos and posting it to our social media. I'm constantly giving quotes for the state's attorney's office on press releases for arrests that we're making. And by and large, the community has embraced the fact that we're utilizing technology and being proactive. We're not a huge traffic enforcement community anymore. I think for a long time we were. We're not. I feel like if you average less than one fatal accident a year, you really don't have a traffic safety concern. Um, but our guys are definitely back to the basics of making sure that when you get in that stolen vehicle hit, you're getting that offender that's here with bad intentions out of town and out of our subdivisions, out of our business communities, and we're only 13 miles outside the city of Chicago, but I think we've really developed a reputation where if you come here, you could expect to get arrested if you come here with bad intentions, and we'll utilize all the technology and training that we have available to make that happen.
I love that. And by doing that, have you found that there's more cohesiveness with the community and they're like more supportive and positive and it's more of that like partnership? Have you found that that's helped you guys through like community?
Absolutely. People said to me when I got in this position that, oh, embrace the honeymoon phase, right? Well, I'm on a 3-year honeymoon now. It's going to be 3 years next month, but I go to homeowners association meetings, my village board meetings, my entire elected official trustee staff and village president and manager are incredibly supportive of the efforts that we're doing as a police agency because they've been proven to be effective. We really do have just about every technological component in modern day policing that you can have. We're going to be the first agency in the entire Midwest in about a month to be operational with a drone as first responder program. And it's all working as intended. But I say this all the time, it's not. You can have every technology available as a police chief, and unless you have the boots on the ground, the officers that buy into the philosophy and that are willing to use it on a daily basis, it's all for nothing. And we really do have a very highly motivated team that's out there doing the job. And so for me, getting in front of the community, that's the easy part. For a lot of chiefs, it's not, because there's of course there's some people in the community that always have an issue with the police in some regard. But for me, I look forward to those events. I look forward to showcasing the things that we're doing. I look forward to putting out our annual report, which I just got, which highlights, it's like a yearbook of the year, and it highlights all the great work that we're doing. And the community has definitely embraced that as well.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but it, from what I understand, when you have that community support, it really does impact morale and wellness of the officers because now they're not just, seeing everyone at their worst. You have community that's supporting you and they're saying good job and they're thankful for the efforts that you're doing to keep their community safe and that proactiveness that you're doing. And so it all ties in with wellness and keeping that morale up because, now it's not like you're working against the community, you're working with the community. Does that
No,
sound about right?
yeah, 100%. Our board and fire police commissioners are made up of 3 citizens in the community, and we don't have a recruitment or retention issue here. And when I'm looking to hire a lateral officer from another agency, that's one thing that I say, or I'll have the commission explain to them, is that you will not find a community anywhere in the state of Illinois that's more supportive of the police than here in Oak Brook. And so that, yes, I think that definitely has a positive impact on mental well-being, because there's a lot of officers that come here from other agencies where they have not felt that. It's foreign to them. There's officers that have come here from other communities that hate the police, that never want to call the police. And it's not like that here. Our residents and our elected officials are extremely supportive of the police department and the things that we're doing.
I love that you said you're fully staffed. You
Yes.
don't have a recruitment or a retention issue. And I think that the more conversations I have, the more I'm starting to understand that, at least with this newer generation, it seems to me that it's not always money that people are looking for. It's how can I go to an agency that is going to support me in my wellness? How can I go to a community that's going to appreciate me and the work that I do? How do you build that culture? How do you put in place training and wellness resources within your organization that are attractive, not only to people who want to maybe lateral or, new recruits, but also people that want to stay there and don't want to leave? How do you create that culture?
Yeah, for me, I was the first internal chief since I think 2006 when I got this position. It might have been 2004. It was a very long time, and so for me, coming up in this organization and being able to do all the things that I always wanted to do, all the things that I maybe inquired about being a patrolman and a supervisor that never came to fruition, I'm able to do. For example, we're a 42 man and woman sworn department full time, and 12 auxiliary part time positions and 8 civilian positions. Um, that's a relatively small agency. I think by national standards, it's probably considered a mid-sized agency because there's a lot of departments that have under 10. But that's a relatively small agency. But just in those numbers, I have a lot of specialties available. We have an officer task force out full time to the DEA. We have 2 officers that are deputized with the Secret Service. I have 5 detective positions. I have 4 TAC officer positions with a supervisor. We have a canine unit, a bike unit, many different specialties that officers get to get involved in. We have guys on their own that are now allowed to do judo. We have guys that are amazing with judo and jiu-jitsu. And, in years past, there was always kind of hesitation to practice those types of things because we would see injuries or workers' comp claims. These guys are doing this on their own time because they want to get better. I think unfortunately, and it's not just here, I think it's nationwide. I've said this numerous times: is everyone fights with the police and flees from the police. Now, we see so many police pursuits, and nobody is going into custody willingly anymore, it seems. So these guys have to be on top of their game physically, mentally, spiritually, um, to be able to encounter some of the things that they're seeing. There's a lot of weapons out there. We've probably recovered more weapons in these past 3 years since I've been police chief, since the previous 22 years in my career.
Wow.
I mean, it's unbelievable the things that we're seeing and doing nowadays. And so I think the physical fitness aspect of this job is more important than ever.
Have you ever heard the expression, if you want change, promote?
I have.
You heard that? And that's what I thought of when you said that. You're like, I learned from, other things that were going on, and I wanted to make a change, and there were certain things that I thought were important. And so promoted and rose up the ranks so that you could be in that position to implement those things. And it sounds to me like it's been really successful. I know that we have talked offline about some of the things that you offer organizationally from a wellness and a training perspective. Are you willing to highlight maybe just a few of those things that you have found to be successful to keep everyone on their A game?
Yeah, sure. Well, first off, I do want to say that all this technology and all these opportunities for officers and all of these things on the wellness aspect are certainly expensive. Um, Good policing is expensive. But bad policing, I promise you, is more expensive in the long term. It's all about community expectations and elected official buy-in, and there is a price tag associated with running an agency the way it should be run. But the cost associated with doing it poorly, cannot be overstated. So, what we've done, and based on some state mandates, wellness checks. I didn't want to just check a box for the yearly wellness checks. I really wanted guys and gals to buy into the program. There are only a couple times a year where I have the opportunity as the chief to be before my whole department. These guys and gals work 12-hour shifts, 10-hour shifts, 8-hour shifts. I rarely see everyone at the same time. But one of the opportunities that I do have to see them is at the 3rd of July for our Taste of Oak Brook debriefing. And when I last year explained to them what I wanted to do for our mandated wellness checks is to bring in our therapist, her name is Jada Hudson, I shared with them years and some dark times in my life, like I previously touched on. She has helped me personally, and I'm not ashamed to say that. I think we put on a front as the police that you don't need anyone to get you through hard times. We're the problem solvers. We're the ones that make everything okay. But I think if you could really dig deep, you recognize that we're not okay, and there's good therapists and bad therapists, and I thought personally Jada was phenomenal from a law enforcement family, understands it, and I really wanted her to meet with all of our entire team to not only meet that mandate, but to check in on them. If they, these guys and gals see some horrific things, some bad crashes, some, children that get injured, and that stuff sticks with you. And so we made sure that we budgeted for a number that would allow officers that are going through something like that to continue to see her above and beyond what is mandated by the state to check that box. And guys and gals have taken advantage of that. And so I'm happy to see that. Additionally, we have a police chaplain on staff. He's always around and, doing ride alongs with guys and girls. And, I think in some regards, they're hesitant to open up to our chaplain because maybe they think that what they tell him would get back to the chief or command staff in some aspect, which is not accurate. Which is why I think having a therapist offsite, like Jada explained, is beneficial because you'll never see her in this building. I think it gives people the sense that whatever conversations they're having are indeed private. So another, I feel like a great wellness tool that we have here, something that I wanted to do when I got this job was have a comfort dog. We have Bandit. He's a 2-year-old Labradoodle. He certainly is my favorite employee.
That is the cutest name ever, Bandit.
We, we, we had our schools name him. So we gave some options, and the kids at our schools picked the name Bandit. Yeah, he lives here. It's kind of unconventional how other people or other departments run a comfort dog program. He lives here. We have a courtyard right outside here, and guys and girls are free to take him home as they want to. But he's a hit with the community, and I think that even just having him on midnights and those long lonely shifts when you want to come in and cuddle with a poodle for a little while, that can make you feel better. So, in all seriousness, there's a lot of things on. I think it's really physical fitness is obviously important in police work now more than ever. Your mental well-being is equally, if not more, important. You in police work, you've always had to make decisions in a split second. Now more than ever, those decisions are scrutinized. But they should be made without hesitation. So, despite what's going on in your personal life, I think you have to have the sort of warrior mindset, right, to make those correct decisions in a timely manner. And the only way to do that is to recognize that you need to open up to people. You need to not let things in this profession, in this job, affect you to the extent that it can break you down in your personal life if you let it, or lead you down a dark path in your professional career, like you see all too often. Or, God forbid, the epidemic of police suicide. The rates are out of control. I think that this new generation just maybe has a more difficult time than my generation, the Gen Xers, that we weren't given everything, and then not taking anything away from this new generation. I think they bring so much to the table. I say often, uh, too often, and possibly myself has said this, that, geez, I'm scared for this profession years down the line. Like, this new generation is out there. I think we're doing ourselves a disservice by saying that. I think they bring a lot to the table. All this technology that we're implementing here at the station, like, they can pick it up and run with it way quicker than I ever could. They're different in that they want to ask questions. They want to push back a little bit. That's not necessarily a bad thing. We just need to recognize that and embrace that. But I think one of the things that they possibly lack in their culture or upbringing, generally speaking, is the ability to recognize that, when things aren't going your way, you could fight your way out of that. You could figure out avenues to fix your life. You don't need to go down a dark path, and you certainly don't need to end it all like we see too often across the country in policing now. There's people and resources that you could reach out to, and I think that the more we can kind of expose them to those types of things, the better off we'll be as a profession.
And I really hope, and I know we talked about this before, but I hope that by having these conversations of, wellness and what resources are available, and, having these open, authentic conversations about wellness helps that, and helps to show people that there are resources out there and there are options, and things are hard, but there are ways to recover and to grow and to learn. And it's an opportunity for us to be better and to maybe implement different things that are going to help people. So I appreciate you coming on here and speaking, because this is one of the reasons why I created this podcast in the first place, is I wanted to be able to have these conversations that make people know that they're not alone, and there are people out there that care, and there are resources out there that can help. I want to ask you, because I know, and you used the word proactive earlier, and that is my language. Like, I'm all about it, but I think that proactiveness is the hardest thing to do. I think it's easier to be reactive. I think it's harder to be proactive with things. And I know that you said things cost money. And in the terms of wellness, sometimes it's hard to know if those finances are going towards things that are helping, and it's hard to be able to track different metrics and your return on investment by paying for it in the beginning. And I know you said if you don't pay for it in the beginning, you're going to pay for it on the other side of it. How do you measure success of the wellness resources that you're implementing organizationally?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. We luckily got an amazing donation from the Oak Brook Chamber of Commerce. Contact. There was a company that was looking to donate uh, workout equipment, and I thought, when we were approached by it, that it was just going to be some busted old treadmill and a couple free weights. We have like top of the line, lifetime quality equipment, hundreds of thousands of dollars that we took from this generous donation and converted an old Sally port into our gym, and we allow guys to work out on duty. To take your vest off, leave your radio on, and get in a quick 20 minutes, get yourself ready for your shift, stretch properly, and do your workouts. And I think that in years past, or with a lot of agencies, are like, oh, geez, that's a hot button topic. What if somebody gets hurt? Or maybe your defensive tactics program. I know certainly ours over the years became very hands off, and, hey, let's just go through the motions. Let's not take people to the ground because people are popping shoulders or hurting
Mm.
their wrists. Or every time there's a use of force incident, you see some workers' comp claim where that guy's off for an extended period of time. I think that those are all indicators of an unhealthy organization. I think you have a healthy organization when you recognize people need to push the limits in training. You train how you fight. You work out, and those measurements translate to your effectiveness on the street in high risk situations. So I think that it's measured by my lack of workers' comp claims. It used to be with every use of force incident. Uh, you can almost guarantee there'd be a workers' comp claim associated with some use of force incident. Now if I had that issue, I wouldn't have a police department because there's a ton of police pursuits, there's a ton of use of force incidents, and we're not seeing the types of claims that we've traditionally seen in years past. And I think that speaks for the readiness of the officers and the high morale of the department. So I think it's measured by what you don't see in a lot of officers being out on injury. So that's paid off so far. Knock on wood.
Well, and I'll also kind of go back to what we talked about before. I also think that the fact that you have full staff is a good indication, and not just with injuries, but the fact that people aren't leaving or lateraling or, you don't have trouble hiring new people because, like you said, the organization is healthy. It's a place where people want to be. There's wellness resources, there's training. I love that you said train how you fight. And then in my head, I was like, fight how you train, and then I think that that can go both physically and mentally. And maybe this is a little bit like out there, but like stick with me for a second. But I think that that can go for mental training. And I think that we forget about this sometimes of like training that mental resiliency and how, your brain is like a muscle. The more you train it, the stronger and more resilient it becomes. So training your brain to be able to be in the fight, and to fight through the hard things and to be able to recover from those things and, leaning back on that when you need it the most. So that was what I wrote down is like train how you fight, fight how you train.
Yeah, I like it. Coin it. Coin
Coin it. You heard it first on this podcast.
it. Yeah.
Trademarked.
No, I mean it makes sense though. Yeah, I definitely think it's all of it, right? It's not only being physically ready for when the time comes, but also mentally prepared, right? Because life is tough, just in general. Life is tough, and this is a tough job and shift work, and we're asking guys and gals, young guys and gals, to do things that they've never done before in a moment's notice. So, I think that you have to have the mental capacity to handle those things because not only will it affect you in the moment, it'll certainly catch up to you and affect you if you don't process it and take care of yourself in that regard. So I'm glad that the state has mandated a lot of uh, these mental health issues that departments ordinarily, for financial reasons or whatever, may have looked the other way on. But also, I think by and large, we've recognized the importance of it as a profession. We just didn't know how to get there. And people like you, a lot of people reach out to me to do things like this. What I thought was interesting about your video um, is that it's like dialed in for specific officers. It's not a one size fits all approach. Just like physical fitness isn't a one size fits all approach. If I went down in our gym right now and we've got some incredibly strong guys, I'd be embarrassed to even go in there. I wouldn't want to sit down with them. I need to do my own thing to feel good about myself. And I think the same applies to your mental well being. What one person may need in terms of a wellness check or just staying on task doesn't work for the other person. Certainly spiritually, if someone speaks to you in a spiritual context, like I just had recently, it may turn certain people off immediately, and other people might be intrigued by it or want to learn more about that. So I love the fact that you kind of individualize your programs, covering all the different aspects to the officer's individual needs. Because if you try and throw something at an agency, especially hard-headed police officers, and force it down their throat and make it a one-size-fits-all approach, it's not going to work. That's the one thing I can guarantee. You have to know your personnel, know your team, and not cater to that, but adjust to that, and make it customizable, which I love about what you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think that, I did not come out the gate perfect. This is something that I've learned over time. But I think that at everyone's core, everyone wants to feel like they matter as an individual. And you're right, like everyone is going to need different things. Like you might have back pain, but the person next to you has shoulder stuff going on. Or you might struggle with sleep, and the next person next to you sleeps like a baby, but they want mental resiliency stuff or whatever it is. But I think people want to feel like they're seen as an individual and that they matter as an individual and they're not just a number within an organization. And I think a lot of times when you throw blanket things or maybe you check the box just to say that you have it, people don't necessarily feel seen. And so it's something I've learned over time. But I think that when you can have a lot of different options, and that could be, like you said, work out on duty. Maybe some people don't want that, but they definitely want to go and pet bandit, and that's another option. But you have, and I've said this before, and I coined it as the charcuterie board. Lots of different things that people feel like they can grab onto. And then I had someone at a first responder conference say that charcuterie board was too hard to say, and so they said to call it the buffet. So whatever like works best for you, but just this idea of having a lot of different options so everyone does feel seen and supported as an individual, I think is important. And I know that you're doing that. You're offering a lot of different charcuterie board elements or buffet elements to it. I did want to circle back to one thing that you said, and I wanted to get your opinion on this because we talked offline and you said that you don't want to have incentivizations for wellness. You want this to be something that people within your organization actually prioritize. And you had used the word buy-in before that, on your July 4th, all hands, you're like, I want to get everyone to buy into, talk therapy and seeing someone. How maybe like what has been the biggest challenge with that, if any, and how do you get people to do things without having an incentivization approach? Because I know that if anything I've learned, it's like there's two things that cops really like, and it's like days off and money. And so a lot of times agencies will use those as incentives to get people to do stuff. How have you been able to create an environment where people like actually just care about their wellness and prioritize it?
Yeah. So for years here at our village, there'd be like a checklist, and if you went to the gym X amount of times, you got a certain percentage off your insurance premium. And there was no checks and balances. You could do it or not do it and turn it in, and nobody really cared about it. And I guarantee you, the people that were turning in those forms, were probably not going to the gym as much as they said that they were.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, there's no formal incentive program to stay physically and mentally fit here, but I think that it proves that it's working. Here's a perfect example. I have a young officer, a great guy. His name's Michael Addison. He's very fit, extremely physically fit, and he's passionate about it. And I like working out, but I'm maybe not passionate about it. I'd rather like play pickleball this sweat or something rather than hit the treadmill. But he's passionate about it. He asked me if he could do a monthly newsletter, not getting paid overtime or anything on his own time, and just kind of highlight some fitness. I was in it a couple months ago, and he wants to know your nutritional plans. And he has this whole set of questions that he sends us out monthly. What are your fitness goals? Where do you work out? What do you do? What's your cheat meal? And every month, it's kind of quirky, but I think the guys that even say they don't read it, I think that they read it. It highlights one of your fellow officers and what they do for physical fitness, and I think that's a great thing, because we're all built differently. We all do things to stay in shape a little bit differently, and I think it pushes other officers to say, "Hey, if that's the workout plan that works for that guy, I could definitely do that." Because, like mine said, I eat pizza like 3 times a week. I love pizza. I can't stop eating pizza. So, I think somebody could read that and say, "Hey, yeah, I'll hit the gym a few times a week if I could eat three cheat meals a week or something like that." So, I think that that is the buy-in, right? That's the end result. And that's what makes me feel good, is that guys recognize that it's appreciated. That, yeah, I don't want you to miss your calls. I don't want you to be out of your subdivisions, but like there's down times you could take your breaks and you could work out and feel better about yourself as you're driving around for 12 hours in the squad car, and be more physically prepared to handle that violent encounter possibly that you might deal with on your shift. So I think when you see little things like that, or when I'll go down there randomly throughout the day and see two or three guys down there working out and collaborating on some of the things that they're doing, and I think it just uh, helps to increase morale. And I've had guys lateral here from departments with state of the art facilities, beautiful brand new police departments, which ours is not. and a beautiful state of the art gym that was empty all the time. You know, we converted a garage with a lot of donated equipment, and there's constantly guys and gals in there utilizing it. So I think that's the buy-in. That's the feel good moment that, okay, you know what, it's the right, people recognize it's important and they're doing it on their own time, coming in before work, doing a little bit while they're on duty, and staying after hours and doing it as well. So I think it's important, and I think it's working.
And I think it's important too that you as the chief talk about the things that you do and you're encouraging them to go speak to someone because it's something that's helped you out. And then you have other individuals who are taking ownership of certain things and trying to better the agency. And it's creating that positive momentum of like people talking about it, people doing it, people that are highly respected are setting the example. And it's not viewed as weak. It's actually viewed as like really elite and strong and preparing for the challenges of the career. And so I think people get on board with that, and that's when that positive momentum starts to build. And I think it's also important to realize that momentum can build in both directions. Momentum can build in a positive way or in a negative way. And it sounds to me like you guys have really put in the effort to build that momentum in a positive way. So people are at least open and receptive to the things that you guys have in place. And I think you're right. I think that is a testament to the culture. Because if you don't have that culture, you can throw all of these things on top of it and no one uses it and it's not going to benefit anybody.
For sure. And then I would just add to that, you know, use the word culture. And I say this a lot. I mean, I guarantee everyone in my organization has said this, is that our culture, the culture of any organization, is not all the things that we do correct. It's not all the things that we do well. Your culture is the worst thing that you're willing to accept as an organization. And I'm not willing to accept guys going out there and trying to do this job, not being mentally prepared, not having the tools to do the job, and not being physically prepared to encounter the things that they're encountering every day. I'm not willing to accept that, and I think that that's different for everyone to answer that question. But that's really the measurement of an agency's culture: is what's the worst thing that you're willing to accept. And I think we're doing a lot of things right, and I think that there is a tremendous amount of buy-in, not only from the officers but the community. And so it's been good. I feel like it's been a 3 year sprint to get to this point, but I feel like I have the right team in place. Certainly, two very capable deputy chiefs that make my life a lot easier. And I'm excited for the direction of our department for sure.
I love that. I know you said it twice, but can you say it one more time? Just that one sentence of like culture, because I think that's really
Yeah,
important. I want you to say it one more time.
take a sip of water. Um, Yeah, so I've said this, and I you know, haven't didn't steal it from anyone, but our agency and the culture of our agency, or any agency, and not just the police department, your culture isn't defined by all the things that you do correct, right? Those are all the good things, the things that attract laterals to come here. Your culture is the worst thing that you're willing to accept as an agency. So I think if you could have that in the back of your mind, are you willing to accept an officer coming here that maybe has a shady past, or was not a rock star in their previous agency? I'm not willing to accept that. Are you willing to take a risk on somebody that has a questionable history? Something that would be a red flag to enter this profession. I'm not willing to accept that. I think, you know, if you look at your culture from the context of what is the worst thing that you can accept versus all the good things that you do, I think that that kind of sets the parameter of where you want your agency to operate. And of course, it's going to ebb and flow depending on a lot of things. But I think if you always have that in the back of your mind, which I try and do, um, I think you could be successful in a lot of regards running a police agency.
I love that. I think that's great. I have one more question for you. What words of advice would you give to someone who's earlier in their career in the context of wellness? Maybe something that you wish you would have known earlier in your career that would have helped you, or maybe something that you did well that did help you throughout your career. What words of advice would you share?
Yeah. definitely recognize that this job can and will change you. Um, I think a lot of people get into this profession because they want to make a difference, and you can make a positive difference. But I think if you could recognize that all of the traits that make you an effective young police officer are exactly the traits that ruin your relationships and mental wellness. As a young officer, it's difficult to realize that everyone's lying to you on the street. No, I wasn't speeding. I didn't steal that. It was the other car. It wasn't me. It's difficult, human nature. You want to believe people. But to be an effective officer, if you have in the back of your mind that everyone's trying to get something over you or lie to you, you'll be more effective as an officer. You'll dig into that stop or that encounter more thoroughly. But it's exactly those traits, if you translate them into your personal life, that will ruin your relationships with your family, with your kids, with your friends, with your loved ones. And so, if you can have that recognition early on to know that you have to separate the two, and it's difficult to do, but I think just talking, even talking to you or talking to anybody, I think if you just talk it out and recognize that and have a good support team, that you could be built for the marathon, right? Because it's a marathon getting through this career. I can't believe I'm 25 years in. I feel like a lot of those years are dog years, and I'm certainly at closer to the finish line than the beginning. But there's a lot of guys and gals out there that have a long way to go, and the job's only getting more difficult. But it's still a phenomenal profession. I think the greatest profession on earth. And, you can make a difference, but you need to take care of yourself and have the right professionals and support system around you to make sure that you get to the end healthy.
Thank you. Great words of advice. I really appreciate it.